Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome to episode 115 of the Last Round Podcast. And finally, we have some fights to review and preview. And joining me today to do that is the face of Compubox and host of Inside Boxing Live, Dan Canobbio. Thanks for joining me, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I love this podcast. I'm excited that to be on. There's a lot going on. You're right. We got through that 18 days, 432 hours of no boxing from when Ryan Garcia iced Luke Campbell to that Showbox show we saw last Wednesday. A lot has happened since then, kind of moving and shaking in the rumor mill, and I'm sure we'll get into a lot of those rumors. But yeah, it was really nice to have boxing back on this weekend. It was very welcomed.
Yeah, so we'll dive straight in. So Saturday the 23rd, Mohegan Sun Casino, Connecticut, Stephen Fulton returned unanimous decision over Angelo Leo. This was for the WBO Super Bantamweight. So this was a rearranged fight from last year where Stephen Fulton tested positive for COVID and Angelo Leo ended up fighting Tremaine Williams, beating Tremaine Williams. So I think going into this, Stephen Fulton was the favorite, but what did you make of the fight, Dan?
Oh, man. I mean, I'm still in awe of Stephen Fulton's performance. Just talking about what you just brought up, coming back from COVID, and, it actually hit him pretty hard. He wasn't afraid to tell you that it wasn't just one of these mild cases that people talk about. He actually, was sick. It affects the lungs. It affects everything. So even world-class athletes. So to see how he fought and came in, where a bat out of hell, I mean, just throwing punches and bunches, throwing 99 punches around. Leo and Fulton combined to throw 1,601 power shots, which is the third most in featherweight history. Leo's 913 thrown power shots were also third ranked in junior featherweight history over 35 years. So not only that, he came into this fight as not really like a guy that threw a lot of volume. He was more of like known as a technician. I think he was averaging around 14 and I would say 14 landed, 45 punches thrown per round. And in this fight, Mike, he still landed 30 of 99. So in the biggest fight he can possibly have, after all he's been through, he came out there and left, no doubt. It was close for about maybe 4 or 5 rounds. And then after the sixth on, I thought Fulton took over. But, man, what a performance, and just like a really good person, a really good guy. And the 122-pound division, man, is on fire. There's so many good fights. Even Rais Alim, who fought on the co-main event, put on probably the performance of the night. He's getting a little overshadowed because Fulton was the main event guy. But, man, Stephen Fulton is a force in the division. I think he can take anyone to deep waters if he can fight like that again, which I don't see why he wouldn't. But, the poise, too, after the fight. I don't know if you noticed this. Like, right when the fight ended, he wasn't even breathing hard. He wasn't breathing heavy. He went right over to the corner. He dapped up the other trainer, and then, he got the belt, and then he went over and talked to Custer, and he was just like stoic, and it was like kind of freaky. That just shows me that the dude has like an insane engine and was really, really good shape. So hats off to him.
It was funny you mentioned that because Stephen Breadman Edwards posted something on Twitter about there's like some kind of famous run that all the boxers do in Philadelphia. And supposedly, he holds the record, completely smokes everybody out.
Wait, so he beat Rocky?
Yes, sir. Up the steps. Yeah,
Up the steps?
Yeah,
wait a second. Rocky's not real. That's right. Yeah, I read the same thing too. So he's like kind of a legend in Philly. Obviously Philly has such a rich history of boxing champions. It's been a minute since Philly had a champion, but now they have one. Stephen Fulton is the guy, one of the guys at 122.
Not to put a downer on what he did, but I've always said, even before he stepped up to this world title fight, is for a boxing purist, he's amazing to watch. But I think for some of more of the casual fans, after you've seen 3 or 4 rounds of Stephen Fulton, it's kind of the same thing kind of going on every round, because I think it's only 19 wins and I think 7 or 8 KOs.
Well, that's the thing, right, about these smaller weights. And I think that's a discussion that a lot of people are having on Twitter and in the media is the guys at 147, they just seem like they don't want to fight each other. The young guys at 135 are all doing their separate thing, but it seems like the fights at these lower weights, whether it's Superfly, 122, 126, it seems like they're all willing to fight each other, and they are good fights. Like it was entertaining, but at least in the Reis Alim fight, there were some knockdowns. There wasn't any knockdowns. It's hard to say that it will be like a fight of the year. I think it's obviously because it was the only fights that happened this year. It's up there in terms of punches thrown and all that. But I can get that side of the downfall of being these lower weights. Is like a lot of the guys don't have power. Not everyone is like Naoya Inoue. Reis Salim, like I just said, had some knockdowns. That's exciting, but there's good and bad when it comes to these lower weights. But the fact that they're all willing to fight each other, and I think a lot of the 122 pounders are all under the PBC banner. So maybe we'll see some type of de facto tournament. So I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, I'd like to see him, in there with like a Luis Neri would be a good clash of styles. Brandon Figueroa would be a very interesting, and you'd have to work out your fingers ready for that fight,
Well, that's funny because people were hitting me up, and even Moro said it on the telecast, like, the punch counters that got their work cut out. These are the best fights to count. Like these are the ones where you're on your toes, like literally, like fingers, like you're ready to go. Like it's the fights that drag on where you got to have like laser focus. These fights where they're just throwing like 100 punches around, so much fun.
Moving on, you've already kind of mentioned we've got Rasim Alim, I believe how you say, 18-0, TKO 11 over Vic Paceas, 16-1, and this was for a WBA interim super bantamweight. Mm-hmm. So the main event had no knockdowns. This had several. There was down in, I think it was the 2nd, the 6th, the 9th, and the 11th.
Mm-hmm. Reis Alim and Victor Paceas, two guys that I had circled. A lot of people, the hardcores, had this fight circled because Paceas was coming off of a great performance a few months back on FS1, and Reis Alim is a guy that has a lot of power, and not only that, is like flashy. But that dude put on a performance, man. I mean, in terms of body work, going to the body, his footwork, angles, power, precision. He had it all going from that night, and Paceas had no answer. Like, you could have stopped that fight maybe in the 8th or 9th round. Paceas was taking a beating, but it seemed like maybe the 8th round, Paceas had a decent round that probably propelled him to go to the distance. And but Alim put on the performance of the night. I thought even more remarkable than Fulton after I just laid out there. I thought because of the power. But man, yeah, the 122-pound division. He's just another name that is in there too. You put him in there with any of these guys, you're guaranteed like a fun fight. And it just is what it is at that point. But Paceas, man, that dude is tough as nails. And I was thinking midway through, I was like, what's the gain from getting like going the distance? But now in a division that has so many like good fighters, he could be an opponent. He can work his way back. He can be booked again because that's what it comes down to. So, they really put it all out on the line on Saturday.
Some good. I know obviously we complain about the WBA having so many champions, but Alim looks good as the interim. You got Ahmed Deladev, who's the world or super world, and then Brandon Figueroa. I'd like them really to try and do like a little bit of a round robin, make sure they only have one WBA belt. But there's some intriguing fights.
Yeah, you take a look at it, and I think Neri is like the consensus at the end of the ring has him number 1, but he's like an enigma at the top. Brandon Figueroa is a guy that throws a ton of punches. Even Julio Ceja, who Figueroa beat, he has the record for most power punches thrown in a fight, like 1,300. Like I just talked about how like Fulton threw 903, like he threw 400 more power punches. So I mean, there's a ton of names in the division, and like even I saw a few rumblings of Inoue one day moving up to 122 and challenging some of these guys, because eventually he's going to need opponents, because the thing about these divisions is they get a little thin. They lower out, but at 122, it seems like it's like almost 10 deep, which is like really awesome. And Mick Conlan too. Mick Conlan's in the mix. I know he's a name. He's a guy that's not with PBC that could be a roadblock, but has the pedigree, the Olympic pedigree. Mick Conlan is another name at 122.
Danny Roman, who we kind of keep.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of just like forgetting. I got to pull it up, like the division rankings. But yeah, Danny Roman is another name too, Mike.
Yeah. Obviously, he lost those two, those two titles to Akhmadaliev, and it looks like he's just recently joined Twitter and he's trying to get himself out there.
Yeah,
So,
I like
he'd
that.
be,
I you gotta like that when these guys join Twitter. You gotta feel like telling them like, "Hey, listen, bro, this is a cesspool." But it's you need it. You actually need that to like bring up your profile.
yeah, Ryan Garcia left this week. Big news. Big news.
I knew that was gonna come up. I figured. I think I got to the bottom of it. Like there was like a thing where all the verified accounts had to put in more information, like whether it's just your name or your like email or something by January 21st, and apparently he didn't. I think that was and then he made kind of like a stand, and I kind of got caught up in it. It was Friday night, nothing else going on. We're in this freaking lockdown, so I found myself following every move Ryan Garcia makes, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more too, right?
I know exactly. Yeah, he's everything he does, is big news now. So we have to talk about it, I guess.
Yep.
But rounding off that card, Rolando Romero moved to 13-0 TKO 7 over Avery Sparrow, who dropped to 10-3. Sparrow was down in round 1. Sparrow came in on a day's notice after replacing Justin Palado, who missed weight, and this ended up being a non-title fight for Roland Romero. Interesting fight. Sparrow seems to just keep getting chance after chance after chance. So.
Right? Like guy gets arrested at Target the night before he's supposed to fight Ryan Garcia. They have him around as a replacement, which turned out to be like a good thing because I want to see Romero fight. I think the dude is he's got skills. He's got some type of marketability where either people can't stand him or people are fascinated by him. I'm fascinated by the guy. He's got power, that's for sure. He's got a weird, like an awkward style. I mean, there isn't much like nuance in there. It's just like I'm gonna just put my head down and I'm gonna blast. But he also talked about how he wanted to box a little bit, and he did that too. I think he mixed in some boxing. He had a guy that in front of him that I don't like. Wasn't really up to snuff or ready for the assignment. But I thought he looked good. He's another name at 135. And he's like I said, the dude's like he's like a lightning rod for some reason. People like I know he talks a lot of trash, and I don't know, every fighter does, but for some reason his trash talk seems to get on the radars of more people.
Yeah, I kind of like it. He's not the greatest style to watch. He's more of like a mauler / brawler, but he knocks people out, and that's fun to watch. I like the trash talk from him. So he's interesting for the division. I don't know what kind of ceiling he's going to have. I think he might have got a world title a little bit too soon, so I think he might come unstuck when he has to face one of the better mandatories.
That's the problem, right? With the WBA, he's given these titles, and it gives like a guy like him who's not. Come on, he's not a world champion. He's a guy that's inching up, and in a perfect world without all these belts, he'd be like a 8th or 9th ranked guy at 135, working his way up. But like I said, I think his marketability and whether it's positive or negative, I think it's going to help him. He can potentially get in there and brawl it out. It could be a good measuring stick for some of these guys. Like, it's interesting. I'm definitely keeping an eye on him. And there's a lot of guys out in 135 outside of the top 4 that we always talk about, or 5 if you want to keep Lomachenko in there. There's other names in there too, and he's definitely one of them.
Yeah, that division's on fire at the minute. There's so many great fights we can see, but knowing boxing, will we see them? That's the problem that we always have. Boxing's its own worst enemy.
Yep, that's for sure. We don't know. And if you follow me, I'm like more of a positive outlook. Sometimes it's people think I'm too positive, but we can always hope for change. We can always hope for that. We want to see the best. Maybe like this new generation, at least it's fresh. I mean, they can right the wrongs, but it comes down to the promoters. Comes down to the same stuff: promoters, networks. Everyone being greedy and wanting to, have the most money, have the most A side. It's just the same old stuff that I try to avoid because anyone can. You can go on Twitter and find that anywhere. You can go on and find like a guy that's going to tell you boxing sucks or this, that, and the other. You can find that. This is an alternative route, alternative takes that I like to provide, and hopefully we see these fights.
Talking about promoters, talking about money, moving on to the fight previews. So maybe on Friday, the 29th, we may see Manuel Cha against Trevor Bryan. God. So it's 2021, and we're still talking about Don King, the Enigma.
Don King. This is it for him though. This is the last guy. Like you keep hearing like this is like Tavares Cloud was supposed to be the last guy that Don King had, and he lost to Hopkins for the title like way back. That's like 2014, or I want to say, or 2012. I don't know. But yeah, this fight, wow. I've been keeping up with it, not too much, but these familiar names. That fight has been ordered for what, like 5 years now?
Yeah, according to what I could see, it said since November 2017. So to catch everybody up, he put a poster out saying Manuel Charr is going to eventually fight Trevor Bryan.
Yeah.
And Charr had some visa issues about trying to get over here, and then Charr was kind of saying that he'd never agreed to the fight, but Don King had won the purse bid. So Don King ended up trying to make Bernard Stavern against Trevor Bryan because I think they're both under his promotional contracts. So, it's kind of win-win.
Right,
so it's win-win for him. And then I believe yesterday Manuel Charr ended up getting a visa and then actually has flown into Florida. So all a mess, knowing Don King, all a mess.
Yeah, Jake Donovan from Boxing Scene has been pretty on top of this. And yeah, from the looks of it, it looks like Charr is prepared to arrive in South Florida. $2 million? Like who raised the $2 million? Like, man, the heavyweight division is so interesting to me. This is so many movers and shakers, and Don King is a name that I did not think we would still be hearing about in 2021. But as he says, only in America. Only in America. Only in South Florida now, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Manuel Charr's going to be in there against Trevor Bryan. Neither of them have fought since. Charr's not fought since November 2017.
Yeah, and people are upset about exhibitions. People are saying exhibitions are uneven, and this is a mockery. There is no moral high ground in boxing. Enough with that. Find a different excuse to say why you don't like a boxing exhibition, because look what's happening this weekend in the heavyweight division. They're trying to tell you this is a legit fight between guys that haven't fought in 5 years. I mean, I'll still watch because we love boxing, but it's just, you just gotta know what you're watching.
It's just interesting as well because Don King's put it on his own donking.com, and it's also going to be on Fight TV. He's not used any of the normal TV routes, so just very interesting for Don King. In 2021, he's still around, still trying to hold in several pieces of the heavyweight division. I think
these guys are going to fight. These guys are going to fight. Any of the top 5 of the division. Like Bermain Stavern. Last time you saw him, he was absolutely waxed by Wilder. I mean, I was ringside for that. It was one of the most brutal knockout. It was like assault. Like that was insane. So whatever. If they can make money and the fighters are getting paid, and hopefully they don't get screwed on that regard, then so be it. It's like America, bro. You can make money if it's there, but we'll see.
Yeah, and obviously the winner of that fight will probably move on and have to face whoever holds the WBA title after Anthony Joshua and hopefully Tyson Fury fight each other. But moving on to Saturday the 30th, we have the Battle of the Calebs. Caleb Plant, 20-0 against Caleb Truax, 31-4-2. Interesting fight. I don't know how Caleb Plant has managed to kind of have some soft touches since picking up the IBF title. He fought, Subway Mike, and then Caleb Truax.
Subway Mike.
So
that was I was ringside for that too. That was just one of the most lops. Talk about exhibitions and YouTube fights. Like that was, he wasn't even in the same league, same stratosphere as Caleb Plant that night. But yeah, the Battle of the Calebs. Caleb Plant is becoming a polarizing figure in boxing, and I feel like for all the wrong reasons. The guy has all the talent in the world. I think you can agree with that. Great jab, slick, great defense. One of the best defenders at 168. Truax, on the other hand, is one of the worst defenders at 168 in terms of getting hit and punches landed. But yeah, I mean, this is like now like his last 3 fights. After Uskatazi, he's now fought Lee, Feigenbutz,
yep,
now Caleb Truax. That's not going to help your career. I don't quite understand what's going on here. I just tweeted this out that I feel like a lot of guys at 147 are sitting around waiting for Pacquiao, and now it looks like a lot of guys at 168 are doing the same in regards to Canelo. So if Canelo says I only want to fight the champions at 168, that's like the lottery. So if you're Caleb Plant, this is just speculation. I don't know if this is for sure. If you're Caleb Plant and say, well, I could fight David Benavidez, who's very tough, or I can fight like the likes of Caleb Truax. And I know that maybe at the end of this year I could fight Canelo, or the beginning of 2022 I could fight Canelo. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of fighters would probably take that route. That's kind of just what it is now at this point. And you have Canelo kind of just telling you what his plan is. You know, prior cash cows like Floyd, he didn't like tip his hand like Canelo's doing right now. Like, you know, Floyd left you guessing. Remember Khan and Maidana? They put him. Floyd put him through like a pole, and they made him jump through hoops to get that. So it's hard to really knock Caleb Plant because I understand the business side of things, but it also, like, you got to fight a tougher opponents than Caleb Truax, because it doesn't do anything for your fighting ability. It doesn't do anything for your development, and it doesn't do anything for your marketability.
And then sometimes you do wonder, fighting someone so many levels below what he's like, and then jumping up and fighting like a Canelo. Sometimes maybe it's good to have a little bit of a harder fight. You get the win, but you've kind of been tested, and you realize, what level you need to be at.
Like, you're not saying anything crazy right now. Yes, of course. Like, Canelo did it himself. Like, he fought Trout, he fought Lara, and then he went up or whatever down to fight Mayweather. I mean, on any other sport, you keep on progressing, whether it's a scheduled sport or even like the UFC. I hate to use that comparison, but they have a ranking system. And like, you don't just magically get, you don't just jump in there with a champ. It's is what it is. It's like more of the boxing stuff, and it's kind of PBC has a business model that has worked out pretty good for their fighters. They make a lot of money, but it comes with criticism. And I think after this fight, I mean, all bets are off for Caleb Plant. I think he's hearing it no matter where he goes. Go to his Twitter account, go to his Instagram. Anytime he says anything, the replies are, stop fighting bums, or when are you going to fight Canelo, or when are you going to fight Benavidez? Like, come on, man. Like, it gets to the point where and I know that the guy wants these fights because he's a competitor. All these guys are. And getting to talk to him and getting to know him, the dude takes boxing serious. Like, it's his life. Like, a lot of guys say it's their life. He is just a boxing guy through and through. That's why he was so offended with Mike Lee. Remember, Mike Lee was talking a big game, and he was just pissed off at Mike Lee because he looked at Mike Lee as like a part-time boxer, a guy that, he kind of used the fact that he had like an MBA against him, used the Subway commercials against him, because you're just like a guy you're a part-time boxer, and I'm a full, like, I take this so serious. So I want the best for Caleb Plant, because I think he can be like a marketable guy, but got to step up the competition.
Looking into our crystal ball, obviously, we know that Canelo's fighting Avni Yildirim. I would guess and pencil in he's probably going to fight Billy Joe Saunders in May. So looking forward to September, Caleb Plant's probably got to be top of that tree.
Yeah, you would think so. But that involves Canelo potentially going over to Fox, and that involves Matchroom and PBC working together. Now we get into the muck. Now we get into the things that fans have become so tiresome of hearing. The promoters squabbling over money and TV rights and this, that, and the other. I put it out there, like, what does Caleb Plant do if, let's just say, Canelo fights Avni Yildirim in February, and he says, you know what, I'm going to fight Triple G, because that Eddie Hearn is going to put that in his ear. They're working together. Triple G is with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Sport. They're both back together again, Triple G and Canelo. That fight's going to make Canelo more than it's going to make him against Caleb Plant or BJ Saunders. So it's not a lock that Caleb Plant's going to get a fight with Canelo this year. So it even like opens it up for what is he going to do after fighting Truax. So, maybe like a Daniel Jacobs, who's a free agent technically. I could see Jacobs versus Truax. I mean, it's somewhat of a soft touch considering how Jacobs fought in his last fight. But I do think that Eddie Hearn, we know Fast Eddie, how he operates. He's trying to push for that Golovkin fight because it makes him the most money. You can tell Canelo that it makes him the most money. Golovkin obviously wants it. We know that. So I do think that he does want to unify, and maybe he picks up maybe May is Saunders, and then September isn't a lock for Plant. It could be, I really like working with Eddie, so fine. I'll finally fight Golovkin. He'll be that much older, and I'll probably end up, either stopping him or a one-sided decision.
No, that's true. That's true. Because if he stays on that side of the street, you look at Triple G has to be top of the pile. Maybe a Jaime Munguia could be second, obviously due to the Mexican holiday.
Did you see that though? Canelo recently said he has no interest in fighting Munguia because he's Mexican, and he doesn't want to fight any fellow countrymen at the moment. I did not know what to make of that.
No, very strange, because everyone, ever since Munguia kind of hit the scene, everyone was like, okay, they'll both go their own course, and eventually they'll meet, like on one of the Mexican holidays in either, Cinco de Mayo or in September. So for him to say that was very odd. Yeah.
Very strange. So I know that Benavidez is a Mexican American. Is he out of the running? I hope not, because that's the fight that I really want to see. And people throw out Beterbiev and people throw out all these names that I don't really think are realistic. I'm a big David Benavidez fan. I think he's had transgressions, but a lot of fighters have. He missed weight during a pandemic. That is on him 100%, but it wasn't just like a regular old missing weight. Yes, the cocaine stuff. Not the first fighter to mix it up with recreational drugs, and he's not going to be the last fighter as well. But when it comes down to it, that guy is a ferocious fighter. As long as he can make the weight, maybe one or two, he's holding out to fight Canelo. And as a fight fan, you should want to see that. You should want to see Canelo against Benavidez one day, hopefully soon.
Talking about Benavidez, it just looks like he's fighting Rashid Ellis, which is a good.
Got announced.
Yeah,
or rumored,
that's
whatever.
That's a good fight, and when he could end up being a 3-time WBC world champion and never lost.
3-time, and he's like 23 years old, 24 years old. He's never mentioned in the same breath as the best young fighters in the game, because everyone thinks he's like 35 because he's been around forever. He won a title at a young age, lost it, won it back, lost it. So it's not a perfect sport, man. This isn't like baseball, basketball, football. These guys are crazy. They're wild, and it looks like he's got it more together. He's just had a kid, and that could change your outlook on life. And I'm always rooting for him. I think he's a good dude and awesome fighter. And I want to see Canelo against that giant of that. He's like a freak of nature. Benavidez. The guy's like 6'1", 6'2", 168 pounds, and he throws like 75 punches around. That's intriguing to me.
And he has a good story. He kind of started boxing because he was, obese and, turned it all around. So you can see pictures of him in Wild Card, and he's like a real chubby kid. So he's got a good story.
A lot of fans just write him off. Like it's insane. Like he came in 3 pounds overweight. Horrible. Like there's no excuse. Even a pandemic, and it was a different fight week. He should have known that going in. Like you can't go for runs outside. You can't go you can only go to the gym for an hour in that Showtime bubble. I don't know if things have changed since his fight in August, but he won't let that happen again. You'll probably hire Perfecting Athletes or one of these companies that goes in and does a fitness plan. But it's crazy how fans just will write you off right away. I got a kid that's 23 years old, but I can see why. But I'm not one of those that are willing to write him off yet.
No, especially with his, fan-friendly style. You should definitely he's one to watch. We're talking about, Fulton having a very good technique, but kind of a little bit samey, like after he starts winning the rounds and he gets into a rhythm, you kind of like, okay, this is going to be a 12-round decision. Right. Benavidez is the complete opposite. You have to watch because those bombs are flying and you never know when he's going to take people out.
Well, look what he did to Anthony Durrell. I mean, I've never seen anyone do that to him. No one stopped him like that. So yeah, he's got all the skills in the world. Just got to put them together. I'm interested to see him fight in March. I think it's the same night as Estrada Chocolatito. So that's another thing boxing just keeps doing, is just competing against itself, counter programming themselves. But maybe DAZN goes early. I doubt it because it's going to be in the States. So I don't know. I watch them all. I don't know. How do you, when there's 2 fights on at the same time, which one do you usually, the bigger fight or do you try to double screen it?
Yeah, I do. One on the TV, one on the laptop.
That's cool. I mean, I honestly brought up the fact once, like, say boxing didn't have all these promotions and it was just one uniformed league, we wouldn't have these anymore. We wouldn't have the marathon days like we've had over this past year, where there's like fights, all different fights on all different hours. It's quirky and like fragmented, but sometimes it's like a lot of fun.
Well, February the 13th, since we're touching on it, we have, fights in the UK, and then we have the Top Rank show, I think, with Joe Smith Jr., and then we have the DAZN show with, Jojo Diaz against Rakhimov.
Yeah, I love it.
February the 13th is a complete write-off. So if you have girlfriends, wives, it's Valentine's Day, they can just, wait.
It's great because I do these weekend recaps. Every Sunday I'll consolidate everything that happened this weekend, put it into 2 minutes, and dress it all up. And that I got the idea from that reason alone. Is like there's so much boxing on. There's no way a casual fan or even a hardcore fan can keep up with it if they have like kids, girlfriend, wives, commitments. So and also people have ADD. So 2 minutes you can consolidate it to 2 minutes. But yeah, I love these like crazy weekends where there's so much boxing on around the clock. I'm pumped. I'm ready. Let's bring it on.
Exactly. Right. Moving on to the news and notes. Probably the biggest news of the week, I would say. Ryan Garcia against Manny Pacquiao.
Wow. Man, it's just a fight that is boxing, man. A fight that just comes along out of absolutely nowhere. And it's funny, and I don't want to pretend like take credit or pat myself on the back here, but I was listening to Ryan Garcia on Chris Mannix's podcast, and it was directly after the Luke Campbell fight. Might have been a couple days after, and maybe Mannix knew this or not, but he asked him, he's like, "Oh, did anyone who called you after the fight? And you're so famous, blah blah blah. Who called you after the fight?" And he goes, "Manny Pacquiao." And I was like, "Oh wow." And he's like, "Manny Pacquiao like trumps anyone that can ever possibly call me." Because, if you think about it now, like Ryan's getting into religion, Manny, very religious, one day Ryan wants to see himself, helping others like Pacquiao did. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And then I also heard a rumbling that Al Heyman had called Ryan Garcia before the fight. Good luck, champ. Maybe that's about, Gervonta. He didn't just call him out of the well-being, like, hey, have fun out there, kid. There's always business in boxing, especially with Al Heyman. So that kind of like got the ball rolling, and I wasn't like feeling it enough for me to just throw it out there on Twitter because you just get stomped on. But I was just like, man, Ryan Garcia versus Manny Pacquiao is not that crazy of a fight because they're not that much different in actual size. Like Ryan Garcia is taller than Manny Pacquiao, like got him by like 3-4 inches. Pacquiao walks around at 145, 150 tops. Maybe now in quarantine he's putting on the weight. 150 tops. Ryan Garcia, what? 150,
probably.
Like they could come to an agreement on a weight. Not that crazy of a fight. And Pacquiao obviously is Manny Pacquiao, but he'll be 42 years old when this fight happens. Hadn't fought since the Thurman fight, July of 2019. Still think he's going to win and he's going to be a heavy favorite, but it's not like absurd. It's not a crazy fight. I put it on Twitter and I'm getting like all this onslaught from people that I tweeted that Manny Pacquiao versus Ryan Garcia is getting people very emotional. Therefore, it has to happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
It moves the needle and it's such a marketable fight. It's a real fight. I know they're talking about an exhibition, and I think would be a huge mistake. But if it's a real fight and they can somehow work a way that even like Pacquiao's title is on the line, even if his title isn't on the line, he vacates it, whatever. Pacquiao I don't really think he cares about that at the moment. He wants to make the most amount of money. This fight can generate upwards of 2 million buys. I firmly believe that this fight, Pacquiao and Garcia, can do more than Pacquiao and Tank right now. What do you think?
In terms of buys, yeah, I think we're looking at,
2 million is like the ceiling.
Yeah, I would say somewhere between 1.5 to 2 million, depending on the price range and what platform are they going to stick it on. But I agree with you. Like, I like the fight, but I don't want it to be an exhibition. I mean,
exhibition soured me, man. Soured me fast. I don't want an exhibition. I put my neck out there to say that I like this fight, and the purists or like people come and chirping at me. How could you like this fight? It's a mockery of the sport. Like, relax. It's not a mockery of the sport. It's two guys that are active fighters, or however you want to phrase that, because things are changed now because of COVID. But an exhibition, once I heard that, I was like, no, I just completely did it. I'll do an about face on it, and I won't be that excited for it.
No, I totally agree. Manny's obviously already lost his O. Ryan stated in interviews previously that, he kind of wants to turn the clock back and he's not too bothered about losing. And he wants to be like the 60s, 70s, 80s fighters where, you can lose, but you still fight the best and everyone just fights each other. So if he's going to stick to his word, then, just make it a real fight. If it's going to be on pay-per-view and we're all going to pay for it, they're both boxers. No one's crossing over into another sport, so they have to make it an exhibition. Just make it a normal
Makes
fight.
No sense. I don't get it. And I was talking to some people in the business, like, why would this be an exhibition? What makes this an exhibition? Is it Manny's choice? Is it a commission? It can't be a commission because it's not like they okayed Mayweather versus McGregor when Floyd was 4 years younger, and McGregor was his first fight in boxing. They okayed that one. I understand there's a ton of money, but there's a ton of money in this fight too. It's not because of size, as I just talked about. It's not that crazy of a size difference, and the skill level leans towards Pacquiao, but it's not egregious. So I don't get the exhibition aspect of it. It makes no sense. Sean Gibbons, if you follow him on Twitter, he's kind of throwing some water on it. They said everything's being discussed right now. I know there's a video of Pacquiao saying I'm looking at Crawford, Spence, and Ryan Garcia as an exhibition. Just Ryan Garcia, not the other two. I don't know. Maybe he wants the belt. He wants to keep the belt then, and maybe this is one way of him getting the Garcia fight, getting the money, keeping the belt for a potential showdown with Spence or Crawford. I don't know. I wish I had more answers in terms of the exhibition, but if they just check Twitter and or check the fans' reaction, which is one of the good things about Twitter. I know there isn't a lot of great things, but one of the good things is you can use it as a gauge. You can see what fans are interested in. You can see what fans are tweeting about, and the overall theme that I've seen is that an exhibition is no. Fans don't want to see that.
Kind of on this similar sort of realm, Jake Paul's agreed to fight ex-UFC fighter Ben Askren. Yeah. What do you think about all these sort of like YouTube fights and throwing into the mix the Manny Pacquiao exhibition fights?
I really don't have a problem with them. I cover boxing as a whole. I have a different view on it than others do. I look at it as you have to separate them. I know that the Jake Paul thing kind of like is blurring the lines because he's considered a professional fighter and that's a sanctioned fight. It's 8 rounds, and I guess Ben Askren is now going to become a pro fighter, a pro boxer. But I think they're separate entities. I think this fight's different though because there's 2 athletes. But like when it's tough to explain. I just think it's 2 different lanes. A lot of this is like entertainment, and it's celebrities, and Jake Paul is a celebrity, however you want to slice it, using boxing to generate revenue. So it could be Jake Paul playing darts. It could be Jake Paul, playing one-on-one basketball. It could be Jake Paul literally doing anything against someone else, creating revenue and interest and cashing in. He just happens to be using boxing. And from what I've seen from Jake Paul is he respects the sport. I mean, he goes on these tirades and it might not be your liking, but he takes it serious. He's not calling out like crazy names. Look at the names that he's calling out. Dylan Dennis, Conor McGregor. He's not saying I can beat Canelo. He's not saying give me, the best. I don't even know what weight he is. Give me the best light heavyweight. I think he's like 175. So I think it's separate lanes. It doesn't bother me as much as some others do. And mostly because another thing is people want to say it's ruining the sanctity of the sport. There is no sanctity in boxing. It is a circus sport with circus individuals. Get your money and get out. If you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. You want to support it, go ahead. It's all fun and games. I'm able to separate what is a good fight and a real fight from whatever Jake Paul is doing, and I'll choose to enjoy them all.
Do you believe, or do you see in what you do with your podcast and your show, do you see an increase in how many people watch, how many followers?
Yeah, of course. Like what I like to do in my style is I want to bring everyone in. I give you the punch stats, which is like hardcore stuff, and the fans love it, and some hate it, whatever. But I try to break it down to layman's terms of what we saw the other night. Like with Fulton, the guy was he doubled his output over the course of 12 rounds in his first title fight. That's impressive. That's using the numbers to bring the boxing fan and give him perspective. But I also like to talk about Jake Paul. I like to talk about Ryan Garcia versus Manny Pacquiao. I like to talk about, these YouTube fights. I like to talk about celebrity fights. Jose Canseco is fighting against a barstool guy. It's boxing. I mean, it's all boxing. It's like I said, it's not a sport that has a sterling reputation. So let's just have fun. Like, why can't we have fun? Like, why can't we know that Canelo is a serious fighter and he's chasing history, and Jose Canseco is a washed up baseball ex-steroid guy getting in there and throwing down. Like they know I know it's not like legit. Like, people should know that. But yeah, I like to cover it all, and I think there's an interest in everything. Like, these are big names, and people say, oh, it doesn't do anything for the sport, and they don't cross over. How do we know? Like, how do we know what percentage of fans will watch a Jake Paul fight and say, "Oh, I kind of want to watch Canelo, or I kind of want to see what Spence is up to." We don't know.
It is interesting. I think, the more that we have, I think eventually we'll get the figures and we'll be able to see, whether people are tuning in, just for Jake Paul and then they're tuning out, or are they tuning in, they're getting hooked on boxing because, normally they'll stick on like some actual proper, professional fights and then
Right.
he'll kind of just headline.
Yeah.
So I think eventually, either this year or next year, they'll, DAZN and other brands will be able to see whether those guys are staying around.
Well, there's a guy, Jay Chaudhry. I don't know if you follow him. He's really into the marketability of professional boxers, and now he's doing work with the Players TV in like basketball. He's kind of left boxing because he couldn't get any crossovers. Even not saying that it's a knock on him. Like he does great work, but it just wasn't getting through to some of these guys. He actually went and looked at that Jake Paul. I think it was Logan Paul versus KSI 2. Wasn't Devin Haney on the card and BJ Saunders.
Yeah.
And he went in and looked at the analytics of how many followers did they gain that night just from being on the card. And it was like astronomical. There was like a huge spike in searches. There was a huge spike in interest in BJ Saunders and Devin Haney. So that kind of like poo-pooed the fact that it's not going to bring in other viewers, but that just shows you that there is benefits to it, as long as you can separate the two, and as long as you're not one of these like get off my lawn guys that tweet at me sometimes like in all caps that this is a mockery. Come on, boxing is a mockery. Let's just take it for what it is.
It's true. That is true. But moving on to someone else who's kind of a sideshow, Adrian the Problem Broner, officially been delayed until February the 20th on his return on Showtime. Still no opponent, but he seems to be taking the sport, I don't know, more professionally now. He seems to have given up drinking. I'm sure he'll come back. He'll get a soft touch opponent, and then eventually we'll see him back in with someone bigger. But has he turned over a new leaf, and does he still have time?
Definitely has time. I don't know about the whole turn over new leaf. I hope so. I want to see anyone turn it around. And I tweeted something like, everyone deserves a 50-second chance. So Broner's been through it, man. He's got money issues. That's probably a big reason why he's fighting again. And he's somewhat still in his prime. But you never know, like the partying, ballooning up to the weight that he ballooned up and losing all the weight. That's not healthy, especially when you're getting up there. He's not a kid anymore. I don't know what he can do in terms of being a world champion again or getting up there, but he's gonna get the looks. He's getting a main event on Showtime, and he hasn't fought since Pacquiao. That's even before Thurman fight. That was February or January of 2019. So he hasn't fought in a long time. When it comes down to it, he just doesn't throw his hands. Even when he was in his prime, even when he was coming up the ranks and he was on HBO, and I was like, man, who is this kid? He's funny as hell, combing his hair in the ring and doing all that fun stuff. But he just never was a volume guy. Like he threw like 30 punches around, 35. He was just like very precise. And if you're not going to like let your hands fly now, I just don't see it. I can see him getting opportunities because of his profile. But I'd like to be wrong, and maybe he can. But there's some names then at 140. Like who's he beating at 140?
Yeah, I mean, he's got the names at 140 or 147, whatever he can actually get his weight down to. And at the minute, he still sells. People still tune in to either see him because they like him, or they see him because they just want to see him get knocked out because they can't stand the arrogance of him.
Well, now he's got two things going for him. Everyone loves the comeback, and everyone wants to see the arrogant guy get knocked out. So, like, I wouldn't be shocked if if he does fight, I think he will. I think they'll find an opponent that Showtime has some of their best ratings in a long time. But I know Prograis wants to fight because Prograis think of it, if you're Regis Prograis, like you're 32 years old. You're not getting any younger, and there's a guy that's ripe for the picking in Adrian Broner, and you can probably make the most you ever had. So I know like there's going to be a lot of guys lining up to fight Broner if he looked decent in that fight. What is it, February 20th
now? Yeah, 20th now.
Moved a week. But that's no longer Mayweather Logan Paul. So we can rejoice there. So I'm interested to see what Broner's got, of course, but I'm skeptical. I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, I'm skeptical. He's just always fun to watch. Just being a boxing fan. The Regis Prograis fight would be interesting. I think Regis really needs to kind of keep that momentum he had, even though he lost to Josh Taylor. He put up such a good performance, and the British fans loved him because he kind of sold himself to them. he needs to kind of, build on that before people forget about him.
I love Regis Prograis, and I work closely with DeBella Entertainment, and he was with DeBella Entertainment for a long time. So I got to watch him fight, before anyone knew who he was, and then eventually, get into the World Boxing Super Series and have success and see his profile get raised. But he's 32. He's not like everyone thinks he's a kid. He's not. He's not. So I'm all for him. You want to fight with Broner, go get it, man, and get your money. Get your couple million. You certainly deserve it because he's just been through one tough thing in life after the next. He was, I don't know if you know his story, like he was upended by Hurricane Katrina, upended by all sorts of personal problems, all sorts of things that were out of his hands. Career gets stalled and stopped. Maybe they took Josh Taylor to the brink. You're right, though. It's all about recency. Like, what have you done for me lately? Like, it's such a hard sport to keep yourself in the public eye of. So I hope he gets that fight. That's a fight that Broner, I think, would take, and I think it's marketable, realistic type of fight, Prograis in Broner. But it all comes down to how Broner looks. Like, is he going to let his hands fly? If he gets maybe a TKO stoppage, it'll go a long way. A boring 12-round decision where he's, doing the shoulder roll, I don't know.
And they can fight at Broner weight,
Broner weight.
Yeah, you get paid so well, you can just fight at whatever weight Broner turns up at the scales.
Exactly. Or I would also, going back to Prograis, I like to see him against Mario Barrios. Barrios looked phenomenal in his last fight on I want to say it was on the Tank undercard. I think he fought Ryan Carl, the Cowboy. Yeah, so Barry, that's another name. I don't know if that fits into what Prograis is looking for right now in terms of big dollar fights. But PBC, they pay these guys pretty good. So,
well, he's a heavy-handed guy. Texas is taken off as a bit of a boxing state. Because he's from Houston, right? Mario Barrios.
Yeah, he's huge in Texas. He's from San Antonio, where the Spurs play. And I remember being where was I? Yeah, I think it was in Texas, or was it one of his fights? I don't know if it was in Texas or it was. I think it was on the Porter Spence undercard. And, the San Antonio Spurs official Twitter account was tweeting about him. And he has a lot of push behind him in terms of, marketability in Texas. But he had a tough fight that night. I feel the guy that he lost, he actually won, but everyone who watched, we kind of knew that he lost. The guy that he fought, it's slipping my mind. But, yeah, Texas is like now the spot to fight in because the COVID regulations, they kind of are very lax. So now all the fights are either going to Florida or Texas, where you're seeing Canelo fight. His last fight was in Texas, and his next fight is in Miami.
It's funny, Texas is kind of taken off. You got Errol Spence, Virgil Ortiz, Bam Bam Rodriguez, Joshua Franco, Charlos. Yeah, forgot about Charlos. Hector Tanahara.
Yeah, it's a hotbed, man. It was Southern California for a while, and it probably still is. And Texas is right next to them, man. New York's slagging behind where I live. We haven't had I got Edgar Berlanga now. We got Edgar Berlanga. We got Teofimo, somewhat calls. He's from Brooklyn. He lived in Brooklyn up until recently. He's back out in Vegas. I'm probably leaving out some other New York guys, but definitely Texas, man. I mean, they got it going on right now.
So moving on to probably the strangest story of the week, the year.
We just went through about 10 strange stories. So how strange could this one be?
Yeah. So Sergey Kovalev, I don't know whether he was trying to blame the fact that he was, what was it, licked a frog, ate a frog.
Who hasn't licked a frog, Mike?
I don't think I'd ever say that on a podcast.
I've done a lot of weird things in college. Never licked a frog.
No. So I don't know. Do you want to go over it, Dan? You want to try to explain to the listeners what exactly went down?
I saw that Coppinger is the one. He didn't report it. He just simply screenshotted Kovalev. Pulling up Coppinger's Twitter now. He just screenshotted what he said, and this is such a Kovalev thing. I don't know if this was him. This is his excuse for popping for testosterone. It's not. I think he was just trying to tell everyone that, hey guys, I just did a series, it's almost like acid. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Mike Tyson talks about it all the time.
All the time, yeah.
And he says it's it can only be administered in some type of forest or some rainforest by a Sherpa type of person. I don't know nothing about it. And I don't even know what is his arm. He's got something on his arm, these dots. I don't know. It's just like, like he takes this frog, he licks a frog, and all of a sudden it makes him not like a racist and not a woman abuser
Mm.
and not a drug cheat. I don't think so. So it's not going to reverse the fact that he both samples, A and B side, tested positive, and he ruined another good payday for main events, who I feel bad for, and the zone and us fans. Like, I wanted to see that fight. I'm sure you did too. Like, that was a great fight that was lined up for with Beck the Bully. But man, that is a weird thing. Seeing that frog thing, it's just, the sport is so absurd.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a very strange one. I wonder if the Zone now have a way to get out of that contract because, he signed the big contract to fight Canelo, then he had two further fights at 2.5 million a fight, I believe. So I wonder if they
Yeah.
still have to pay him or whether that's, there's a get out clause there and, and they're off the hook for 5 million.
Well, yeah. So in that regard, I don't feel too bad for DAZN because I know that they were looking at ways to not do this. I mean, he also, last week, didn't he illegally stream Canelo's fight and he gave everyone the password? Did you hear that story?
Yeah.
So it's just like, I know DAZN was looking to that, like, can we void his contract there, because he is still a name, and I think people will tune in just the same reasons people tune in for Broner. They want to see him. Not the saying that Broner's in the same type of heel as Kovalev is, but maybe. But people want to tune in to see Kovalev lose. So he kind of screwed himself, but he'll be back. Like, I tweeted, like, get this guy out. Like, if there was ever, like, there's no one that can kick him out because there is no, like, unified, over sanctioning body or figurehead that could kick him out. But come on, man, his rap sheet is insane of just being a terrible person, even for boxing standards. We talked about Benavidez doing recreational drugs as a kid and just messing up, like some of the stuff that Kovalev, I mean, some of the racist stuff with Andre Ward and some of these allegations on with these women, and it's just not good, and that's not someone we need anymore in boxing.
No, exactly. It was a good fight. It was a good step up fight for Beck the Bully because I think he went in as favorite, coming up, just knocking people out, heavy-handed guy. So I think it would have been a good name for his resume. I know they looked at
and Beck said that he would take it no matter what.
Yeah. I was at Joe Diaz's camp just coincidentally that day, and his team was saying they'd take it, regardless.
They can't do that,
remember when Danny Garcia did that against Eric Morales?
Yeah, but that wasn't that because that was like a diuretic?
Yeah, he failed. It wasn't a steroid, but it was like a diuretic,
right,
to help
it's still,
him lose
like,
weight.
I think I think the commissions, they can't do. They're the ones that are liable if something happened. But yeah, back to he'll be back, right? And Sullivan Barrera or
Gabe
maybe there's
Rosado
another name.
was who the team were talking about, but nothing's been announced officially, and I think he's supposed to be on the card on February the 13th. So it may just be kind of like another little warm-up fight for him because that's only 3 weeks away.
Well, I'll tell you, even if he didn't get the fight, obviously him beating Kovalev would have done wonders for his early on in his career. People now know who he is just because he was associated with this Kovalev fight. I think a lot of people are going to tune in now to watch his next fight to see what he's all about, because a lot of people were picking him to beat Kovalev.
Yeah, which says something.
Despite having 6-7 fights. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy because when I was at the gym, I did a quick episode with Joe Diaz about all those Eastern Europeans, the Uzbeks and stuff, are just kind of taking over boxing. They come in, they're doing like 6, 7, 8 fights, winning world championships because they've had like 200, 300, 400 amateur fights. Yeah. They're already coming in, with solid pedigrees. So it's kind of, watch out.
Yeah, it's kind of, that's changed. Like, I think Lomachenko really made that a thing. Like an amateur with a huge pedigree. And what's the point? Like, why does these guys have to fight like 20 cab drivers to pad their record to 20-0 before they get that first title fight? If you're deserving of it, I think boxing fans are savvy enough to understand, like, this guy's got the skills. So therefore, like, give him that shot. That's why you're seeing these guys, even like Teofimo, getting title shots at 13, 14-0.
It's funny because even if you're fighting a cab driver or whatever, you're still taking punishment.
Of course, that's another. Yeah, people say it all the time. It's so annoying when they're like, "Oh, he's fighting a bum." Like, pretty sure that guy's getting paid too, and like, he's still getting hit. Like,
yeah. So why not just do do the that route, doing 16 to 20 fights?
You could.
then retiring, they're all big fights because you've come through with that pedigree. You've won a world title at 6th, 7th fight. You haven't fought all those bums and got those extra small paydays, but you also haven't taken that extra punishment that wasn't really needed.
Exactly. These guys want the titles. We can crap on the belts, but the belts still mean something to the fighters. A lot of them pay those sanctioning fees, but they want the belt because it still means something. Belts, they still do matter. Very controversial with the belts because some weeks they matter more than others. Everyone wants Pacquiao to vacate the belt so there can be some type of unification. Meanwhile, Crawford and Spence have been welterweight champions for going on 3-4 years now, and they haven't even come close to unifying. So it's a lot of that going on in the sport. Even if it's not like on purpose or not, like fans are so confused. They're putting fans in bad spots where they're contradicting themselves and they don't know what to root for anymore. It's so confusing. And so what you get is like these factions now of people supporting Errol Spence, people supporting Terrence Crawford, taking sides. Pacquiao, who was like beloved, is now all of a sudden looked at as some type of monster for not holding up the division. Come on, it's too much sometimes.
It's funny because when you're on Twitter, you see that people have like their own factions of like PBC, Matchroom, Top Rank. And they're like, oh, this fight's not happening because of Bob Arum. And
How do they know
like,
that?
No, it's just kind of crazy. And Al Heyman pays well. He pays well. So it's Bob Arum that's not making the fight.
Right. You don't know. I always say that the word fan is short for fanatical. So I do respect all boxing fans because they show passion and they listen to our podcast. They take in our content and they help keep the sport alive. But it's like I said, it's gotten to the point where like there's so many different factions and there's so many different organizations, there's so many different networks and promotions that the fans are so confused on what they want. It's nothing wrong with rooting for like a fighter. I will never understand rooting for a promotion or rooting for like a network. I don't get that, but maybe that's just me. Like I don't root for anyone because I work in the business, but like usually fans they'll like a fighter and they want their guy to win, just like a sport. Like I like the Yankees, so I want the Yankees to win. I don't root for like the AL or the American League or like or like go crazy with that. Like root for the owners. I don't know. Strange boxing, like you said, the theme of this show and the theme of boxing is it's one of the stranger sports.
That's why we have content every week, because it's always something strange, something coming out. There's always something to talk about.
You're right. Even during those 18 days, like I was sitting there tweeting about Floyd Mayweather has hair now, and Keith Thurman cut his hair, and Ryan Garcia said this, and Tank said this, and the heavyweights, Fury and Joshua are getting close to a sight, despite not even having the fight signed. It's just headlines, man. Boxing scene, they churn out those headlines. That's all boxing is about.
So what's next with Compubox? I know you have the new agreement with Bare Knuckle, and you have the big event coming up. Paige Van Zant's got her debut on February the 5th.
Knuckle Mania, they're calling it, which I think is a hilarious name and a great thing. I think Knuckle Mania is going to be like their tentpole type of event they do every year around the Super Bowl, kind of like a WrestleMania, but for them, it's their biggest guys, or late Paige Van Sant is in it, Johnny Bedford, who's like one of their top guys. And we're doing Bare Knuckle. Got some other projects in the works. I'm trying to get into the gambling space, getting into that space, with the Compubox stats, kind of weaving in, giving the gamblers a better idea of who to pick. Maybe adding some more analytics to the company, getting a little more in depth with the stats. I feel like fans are interested in that. But just, all systems go. We a lot of big fights. I think 2021 is going to be a big year. I don't know what you think, but I think that there's going to be some bigger fights on the horizon, and not just big fights, but the schedule's filling out pretty nicely. February, there's some good fights in February. March is loaded. I know ESPN's not doing any shows in March, but the Zone's picking up the slack, Showtime, and then we get into the spring and summer and fall where boxing is with like the meat of the season. So we're busy at Compubox.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it's going to be a busy year. Canelo's kind of said he's going to fight 3 times, which is obviously good. The AJ Fury, they keep saying it looks like it's 90% agreeable on both sides.
Yeah.
I think we should get that. So to me, that's that's a great start. If we're going to get at least one of those fights this year, probably in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or somewhere.
Yeah.
But
Kind of
personally,
go ahead.
I just want to go back to fights. On a personal level.
Well, not talk about rumors and stuff.
What's that?
Is that what you mean? Like not talk about rumors or get back to fights?
No, I'd actually be able to attend.
Oh, of course. Are you kidding me? Yeah, man.
Yeah.
100%. This is like the longest I've ever gone without going to a fight. I mean, you could go to Miami if you really wanted to, but I don't know how you feel about it, but yeah, I think that's on the horizon too. That's a huge factor in boxing. I mean, and it's all about the live gate. You're seeing it more than ever this year about how important it is to have fans in stands. Have the fighters should be thanking the fans a lot more than they do. I think that's one thing that we've learned this year is how important spectators are in every sport. Baseball, all the players didn't get paid their full rates because there were no fans. Boxing, the biggest fights can't happen unless there's a live gate contributing to the overall revenue. So I'd love to see it. I think maybe in the summer, maybe more outdoor fights. Until then, I think it's going to be more of the same of what we're seeing is Florida, Texas. Ryan Garcia's fight was in Texas and it was indoors, but it was like 6,000 people, still something. But yeah, you're right. I want to just be like going to a fight Saturday night, big crowd at the Barclays Center. It's for me in Brooklyn. There's weed smoke going through the air. There's fights going off in the crowd. There's a big PBC fight because they're the ones that work with Barclays. Same thing with MSG. Berlanga fighting in MSG the night before the Puerto Rican Day Parade, which has long been a tradition in New York, would be insane. Like get like goosebumps thinking about it. Put Tiafimo in the main event, Berlanga in the co-main. That's a night right there. I don't know about you. I think you would agree that you're gonna cherish going to fights now a little more. Not gonna take it for granted.
No, I was just about to say that. Yeah, I was going to say, definitely won't take, just attending the fights for granted like we used to, I guess. And then, it'd be nice to see that, the promotions and everybody throughout sport, kind of, lowers the ticket prices a little bit, just to try and, sell out, because I think even they've taken, people for granted, and they just try to cream as much money as they can rather than actually just selling out the event. So
You'd hope so. You'd hope so. You'd hope they take a look at where the country is financially, the world, and the pay-per-views go down to a reasonable price. I don't think that's going to happen because even McGregor, I mean, just this weekend, still fighting for $75, and we'll see with Fury and Joshua. That's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be 50 like Tyson Jones was. I think that right there showed you $50, 1.6 or 1.8 million buys.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Mike Tyson and Jake Paul was a big contributor to the doing so well. But if you price these fights by $50, it's reasonable. $50 is like, all right, 50, I can do that. Get to 70, 80, 90. That's too much money. Like, I mean, it's just not feasible. You can still make a good profit off of a $50 pay-per-view.
No, exactly. I thought that might give people, they may look at that and be like, what, maybe we should drop it down, because in the UK, when I was living back there, it was like 15 pounds. Then it moved up to 20 pounds. And then now I think they're all 20 pounds apart from Joshua, which is, 25.
What does that translate to US dollars?
I think it's about 1.2, 1.3 dollars to the pound at the minute.
Gotcha.
So you're looking at
that's a lot. And then, but the zone is a pretty good deal for people in the UK or people not in the US market. So that's a good thing too. I've always been a big proponent of the zone, and they had their issues, and it seems like they're kind of patching it up right now or treading water with giving fans something. It was Ryan Garcia, Joshua, Canelo, Triple G in the span of a month. That's great. And now we're going to get another, February, March, April. There's going to be some big fights, Chocolatito and Canelo again. And who knows what happens with, Joshua and Fury, if the zone's going to be a part of it, whether with a pay-per-view. That's interesting to me. I want to see. It's the one thing. It was the one detriment about the zone was that they can't do pay-per-views. It goes against their mantra, goes against the mod. It's literally impossible. But now they are introducing pay-per-views with Canelo. You saw that, right? You buy Canelo for $50, you get 2 months of the zone on top of it, which is also another pretty good deal.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I mean, when it first came out in the US, I got it obviously due to being a boxing fanatic. And at the beginning, the only thing I didn't like was they didn't have much shoulder, programming. But they've kind of sorted that out. You can have too much Chris Mannix though. Like a show like every single day.
It's pretty much DAZN is Chris. He's a friend of mine, but DAZN is Chris Mannix. Like, dude, you have a show on every day. Like your jabs with Chris Mannix, boxing with Chris Mannix. The guy's really good at his job. I know he gets a lot of flack. I think he's a good live interviewer, and he brings a lot to the table there. But yeah, they need more. Like, ESPN Plus has so much. Even with ESPN Plus, you get like Disney Plus. They have that bundle with Hulu. Like, that's the one thing DAZN is lacking, is they don't have a lot of other stuff, to bring that. You're solely buying it for maybe 1 or 2 fights a month, cards a month.
Yeah, I think, in the UK and probably in the US, when the rights come up for baseball, hockey, football, soccer, or football in the UK, I'm sure they'll probably, go for those, because obviously they're the major ones, and, boxing will become insignificant then. But you just have to wait, I guess.
Yeah, it'll be hard. I don't think that DAZN US will get any NFL rights, because it's just astronomical. And I think I just read something today that Amazon, of course, is going to secure rights to NFL some NFL games. So I know that overseas is the only way you can watch the NFL is with DAZN. So they are doing better in other markets, but in the US, it's gonna be tough. Maybe if they could get the Red Zone channel on DAZN, that would really help things. But that's not easy. That's a big. It's very expensive to get that type of deal. Mm-hmm. But they got to do something. They got to add a little more value to the what is it, 20? It's like 20 a month. That's what I pay for it, even though I write it off because it's work. But still, it's a lot.
Clever. That's a good idea.
I mean, it is. I work for Compubox. I invoice them at the end of the year, but I do try to put myself in the shoes of fans, and I do want to watch Canelo, but I also wouldn't mind watching something else. That's not Chris Mannix.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, just watch Chris Mannix. Just call him, and speak to him.
Hey, Chris, what's going on? FaceTime him. I feel like I'm watching DAZN all over again.
Well, Dan, thank you for your time today. If you want to tell everybody where they can find you and all of your social media and what you have coming up on, on everything, everything you do, Compubox, Inside Boxing.
Yeah, I'm busy, man. It's a good thing. Good thing to be busy. Doing my show coming up this week, Inside Boxing Live. You can catch it every Friday on the Fubo Sports Network. It's a free streaming service. You can get it on my Twitter. I post a lot of stuff to Twitter, a lot of fun content. I think we're going to have Dan Refill on this week. Going to try to catch up with Stephen Fulton. Keith Thurman is also coming on this week, so we'll talk about his hair because he doesn't have any of the fights upcoming. But yeah, pretty much at my Twitter, at Dan Canobbio is where you can that's where I disperse everything. And at Compubox, of course, got some fun things planned this year. Appreciate you having me on. It's one of my favorite podcasts. You guys do great work. Just grinding along. We're all grinding, the sport we love. Plenty to talk about. Even if it's no fights. Talking about ridiculous things. We're talking about the business side of things. We're talking about Adrian Broner's feet. Did you see that picture? Did you see his feet?
You should get Keith to bring his flute. You get a little,
love that.
A little minute or 2 minutes of it.
Yeah, I would honestly. I brought it up to him before. I told him before he fought Pacquiao that he should play the flute into the ring.
Yeah.
But he said it'd be hard with the gloves. So I gave him the idea. But yeah, Thurman is a character. A lot of characters. The sport, I think, is in good hands. I think we're gonna have a big year. I really do. You start with the big fights and work your way down. I think it's gonna end up, when it's all said and done, we do our year-end stuff. At the end of 2021, we're gonna have a good year.
And on that positive note, I think we better finish. So you can find us at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter. And join us next week. Obviously, we'll be reviewing the Jojo Diaz and Rakimov card, the Joe Smith card, the UK cards. Next week, there's a whole day of boxing on February the 13th. So this is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.